He walked into the bar, but was never seen leaving. Hook, 300 palavras. There were only two exits. One led to a well-lit escalator covered by security cameras. The other was a locked back door used only by staff. No windows, no secret tunnels, no blind spots. And yet, on April 1st, 2006, Brian Shaffer vanished. Not on the street, not on his way home, inside the bar, while people laughed, while the music played, while the cameras rolled. Brian was a 27-year-old medical student, smart, charming, exhausted from finals, and grieving his recently deceased mother. That Friday night, he went drinking with friends at a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloon in Columbus, Ohio. He was caught on video entering around 1:15 a.m. He smiled, he waved, he walked into the crowd, and that was the last time anyone ever saw him. No footage showed him leaving. None of the bartenders or security guards remembered him walking out. The friend he was with said Brian disappeared in the crowd while he was on a call. Police reviewed every second of surveillance from every angle. They even checked the rooftop. Nothing. Brian had entered the bar and then simply ceased to exist. His car remained in the same spot. His credit cards were never used again. His phone rang for several days, but nobody picked up, not even a ping, like it was moving in a different dimension, one that didn't leave traces. And now, almost 20 years later, people still ask the same question. How do you disappear from a place that has no way out? Unless, of course, you were never meant to leave. In a world where cameras are everywhere, where every step is tracked, where technology watches more than we breathe, how does someone disappear without a single trace? This isn't fiction. This isn't a theory. This is a case that shook the United States, broke investigators, and still haunts every barstool in Ohio. Brian Shaffer, 27 years old, walked into a crowded bar with dozens of people inside. He smiled, he laughed, he ordered a drink, and then he was gone. No exit, no footage, no body, nothing. Tonight you're going to hear the story that surveillance couldn't explain, the case that even technology failed to solve. We're going deep into the disappearance that mocks logic, into the bar where Brian Shaffer entered and never left. And maybe by the end of this video you'll realize what happened to Brian could happen to anyone. But before we open the last known door he walked through, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Drop a like if you believe justice needs eyes in the dark. And leave a comment below telling us which country and city are you watching from. Because stories like this, they reach further than you think. They echo beyond the place they started. And sometimes they come knocking where you live. Chapter 1. The Last Smile on Camera. It was the last night of March 2006. Brian Shaffer had just finished a brutal week of exams at Ohio State University. His friends said he was exhausted but needed a break. He suggested drinks. They hit a couple of bars, laughed, took photos, shared memories. Brian was grieving the recent death of his mother, but he seemed lighter, as if he was trying to live again. He smiled a lot that night, but no one knew it would be the last smile ever recorded. Just after 1 a.m., Brian and his friend Clint arrived at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, a bar tucked into the second floor of a shopping complex. Security cameras caught them taking the escalator up. Brian, in his jeans and black shirt, walked slightly ahead. He waved at someone. That moment, the wave is the last confirmed footage of him, ever. What happened after that? No one has been able to explain. Inside, the bar was alive, crowded, noisy, full of music and bodies in motion. Witnesses said Brian ordered a drink, mingled with two women at the bar, laughed, nothing unusual. Around 1:55 a.m., Clint said he lost sight of Brian. He assumed he went to the bathroom, but Brian never came back. When the bar closed shortly after 2 a.m., Clint waited near the exit. No Brian. He called his phone. No answer. He checked outside. Nothing. He assumed Brian had gone home early, maybe slipped past while he wasn't looking. But Brian's car was still in the parking garage. Keys, wallet, everything untouched. Police reviewed the security footage dozens of times, from every angle. Brian is clearly seen entering the bar, but never leaving. There was only one main entrance and exit, the escalator, completely covered by cameras. The second exit led to a locked back hallway used only by staff, and it was full of construction debris. Even that exit had cameras. Still, no Brian. Detectives were baffled. Did he disguise himself? Change clothes? Did he slip out during a moment the camera malfunctioned? But there were no gaps in the footage. No blind spots. It was like he evaporated inside a sealed room. The bar was torn apart during the search. Behind the bar, inside the bathrooms, above the ceiling tiles, nothing. Cadaver dogs were brought in, no scent. And none of the people in the bar that night remembered anything unusual. It was a normal night, until someone was missing. Brian's phone remained active for several days. His girlfriend called. It rang, but no one answered. Cell tower data showed one strange ping, far outside the city. Then silence. Forever. Theories exploded. Was he abducted? Did he fake his death and run? Was it suicide? None made sense. He had plans. He was close to his father, his girlfriend. He had interviews scheduled. No signs of mental illness. No note, just absence. To this day, Brian Shaffer is still listed as missing without explanation. No suspects, no evidence, no sightings. He walked into a bar on a Friday night, smiling, alive, and became one of the most unexplainable disappearances in modern history. Some say he never left the bar. Others believe he never made it out of the mirror. Chapter 2. The Vanishing Point. Detective Andre Edwards had seen plenty of missing persons cases before. Most were routine. Runaways, lovers' quarrels, people hiding from something. But this was different. When he watched the security footage for the first time, he said aloud, "People don't just disappear." But the screen said otherwise. Brian went up the escalator, walked into the bar, and then nothing. Investigators combed through every frame from every camera in the building. They mapped out every known entrance, exit, and possible blind spot. They interviewed bartenders, bouncers, patrons, even janitors. Not a single person remembered seeing Brian after 2 a.m. Even more disturbing, none of the other footage from nearby bars and shops ever caught him leaving the area. It was as if the moment he stepped through the front door, reality forgot he existed. Clint, the friend who had gone drinking with Brian, gave a brief statement. He said Brian had been acting normal, sociable, maybe a little distracted, but nothing alarming. When asked to take a polygraph, Clint declined. That refusal would haunt the case for years. Some wondered, was Clint hiding something, or was he just scared of being blamed? Brian's father, Randy, refused to believe his son had vanished voluntarily. He would never leave without telling someone, he said in an interview. Randy drove hours placing flyers across Ohio. He created websites, hired private investigators. Nothing helped. No sightings, no phone activity, just silence. Like Brian had been swallowed whole, the bar itself became a target. Rumors began to swirl. Secret passageways, cover-ups, even organ trafficking. Online forums lit up with theories, each more bizarre than the last. Was Brian being held somewhere? Was he murdered and hidden inside the bar's construction zone? Police dogs found no trace of blood, no scent trail, nothing that suggested he ever left the building or died in it. A few believed Brian might have disguised himself, switched clothes, changed appearance, and slipped past unnoticed. But for what reason? His passport was untouched. His bank accounts never moved. He hadn't packed a bag. He had plans to propose to his girlfriend. People who knew him best insisted Brian didn't want to disappear. One eerie theory pointed to the camera angles. There were brief moments when someone could have exited without being fully seen, if they hugged the wall, ducked behind a group, or timed it just right. But even then, why would Brian do that, and where did he go after that? No cab drivers saw him. No buses were running that late. And Columbus isn't the kind of place you just walk away from unnoticed. Then came the phone calls. For several nights after the disappearance, when people called Brian's number, it rang. Not voicemail, not dead. It rang. Singular Wireless, his provider, chalked it up to a possible technical glitch. But one ping placed the phone in Hilliard, a suburb 14 miles away. Police rushed there. No phone, no Brian, no clues. The Shaffer family clung to that ping like oxygen. They hoped it meant he was alive, being held, hiding, anything but dead. But the ping was never repeated. No messages, no texts, only silence. Over time, hope turned brittle, and then, hopelessly, cold. The police had no suspects, no crime scene, no weapon, no motive, just a man who stepped inside a bar and never returned. They called it a cold case, but Brian's father refused to call it over. He said something was stolen from reality that night, not just his son, but the very rules that kept the world explainable. Chapter 3. The Phone That Rang in the Dark. It was late April, weeks after Brian disappeared. His girlfriend, Alexis, was sitting alone in her apartment, staring at the same text thread she'd read 100 times. She hadn't stopped calling him, every night, like a ritual. Most times it went to voicemail, but that night it rang. She froze, held her breath, watched the screen glow with his name. Brian. The ringtone kept going, 3, 4, 5 times. She whispered, "Pick up," but no one did. The call ended. She stared at the screen, heart pounding like it would break through her chest. Panicked, she redialed. This time, voicemail. Again and again, back to silence. But that one ring, that single connection, was all it took to shake everything. She told Brian's father. He called too. Same thing. One night, the phone rang. The case, which had begun to go cold, caught fire again. Investigators contacted the phone company. Singular Wireless confirmed the ping. The call connected through a cell tower in Hilliard, a quiet suburb west of Columbus. Just one tower, just once. But it meant something impossible. Brian's phone was powered on. Police dispatched a search team. They canvassed neighborhoods, woods, empty buildings, shopping centers. They knocked on doors, asked questions. No one had seen Brian. No phone was found. No strange activity recorded. The scent trail ended before it began. Just a ghost in the signal. Some believed the phone was stolen, that someone was messing with the family. But why? Nothing else was touched. No bank accounts, no emails. Others said it was a glitch, a technical fluke, but a fluke that rings, that pings once and never again. It felt more like a breath. Alexis held onto that ring like a lifeline. She called every day for months, always the same. Voicemail. She left messages, told him she loved him, told him she wasn't giving up. On the anniversary of his disappearance, she said, "If you're out there, please just make it ring again." It never did. Theories spiraled online. Some believed Brian had staged the entire thing, left his life, started over. But why call? Why let the phone ring once and never again? If it was intentional, it was cruel. If it was accidental, it was terrifying. And if it wasn't him at all? Who had the phone? Investigators later admitted they were no closer to answers. They couldn't locate the phone. They couldn't explain the ping. It was one of the few pieces of evidence they had. And it led nowhere. A voice on the line that never spoke. A presence without proof. Just an open wound in the timeline. Years passed. The number was eventually disconnected. But some nights, Alexis still dreams of the ringtone. She wakes up reaching for her phone, heart racing. Every time it's just the dark, just silence. But deep down, she swears. The night it rang, she felt something shift in the air, like someone was listening, but didn't want to be found. Chapter 4. The Friend Who Stayed Silent. Clint Florence didn't seem like someone hiding something. He was calm, composed. But the night Brian disappeared, he stopped answering questions, and over the years, his silence only deepened. He was the last person to see Brian, the only one drinking with him, the only one who knew his state of mind, and when asked to take a polygraph, he refused. To some, it was his right. To others, it was a red flag burning in the middle of the case. The police asked politely. He declined. Brian's family pleaded. He stayed quiet. He lawyered up, and then he disappeared, not like Brian, but into privacy, and stayed there. Clint claimed Brian had spoken to two women at the bar that night, that he wandered off, that he was probably meeting someone else, but no one could confirm it. The women said Brian was friendly, but not strange. Nothing in their exchange hinted at anything unusual. When pressed for more detail, Clint always said the same thing. I don't know. People started asking the obvious questions. Did Clint see something? Was there an argument? Was there a reason he wouldn't talk? And if Brian really just vanished, why would his best friend not help find him? It didn't make sense. Unless, of course, the story didn't match the truth. Private investigators were hired. They followed Clint, watched him. He lived a quiet life, moved cities, worked jobs, no criminal activity, no signs of guilt. But guilt doesn't always show up in handcuffs. Sometimes it just sits in silence. Online forums turned Clint into a villain. Reddit threads dug into his background. People theorized he lured Brian somewhere, that he left the bar with him and covered it up, that maybe Brian never left with his own feet. But none of that was ever proven, because Clint never spoke again. Brian's father believed Clint knew more. He said so in interviews. I'm not saying he did something, he once said, but I am saying he isn't saying everything. Randy begged him, if you know anything, please just help me find my son. Clint never answered publicly. And then Randy died. The day Randy died in a freak accident, a tree falling during a storm, a silence deeper than before settled on the case. No more family pressure, no more media calls. And Clint, he faded completely. No statements, no appearances, just distance. People still ask, if your best friend vanished into thin air, wouldn't you scream for answers? Wouldn't you fight to find them? Or would you protect a secret so dark you'd rather bury it with time? Only one man knows what Brian said that night, and he's kept it locked inside like a vault for almost 20 years. Maybe Clint is innocent. Maybe he's just tired of being blamed. But in a case this cold, every quiet breath sounds guilty. Every refusal echoes louder. And the truth, it's not buried in evidence, it's buried in silence. And silence is something Clint Florence wears like armor. Chapter 5. The door that shouldn't exist. Most people believed there were only two exits at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. The main front entrance with the escalator and cameras, and the service hallway behind the bar, locked and watched. That was the official story. But someone online noticed something strange. An emergency exit sign caught in a reflection from an old photo. One that didn't match the official floor plan. An exit that wasn't supposed to be there. Reddit exploded. Users zoomed into satellite images, compared blueprints, tracked other businesses in the same complex. What they found shook the timeline of the case. A maintenance corridor ran behind several units. It connected to a back stairwell, a path without cameras, and technically, it could lead out of the bar, but no one ever mentioned it. Not the police, not the bar staff, not Clint. When asked, the building's management said, it's not accessible to customers, but that didn't mean it was impossible, just forgotten or hidden. Investigators eventually revisited the building. Years had passed. Renovations were done, walls changed, locks replaced, but when they traced the rumored path, they found a door sealed shut, painted over, forgotten. It led to a narrow service hallway. It had no camera, no alarm, just concrete and shadows. The theory emerged fast. What if Brian had found that exit, or been led there? Was it part of the bar or connected to another business? Could someone have used it to move Brian without detection? And if so, why didn't the police find it in the first place? Some said it wasn't incompetence, it was suppression, that someone with power had something to hide. A secret door is only dangerous when people know where it leads, and this one? Nobody seemed to know who even had the key. Alexis, Brian's girlfriend, clung to the theory. If there was a third way out, she said in an interview, then everything we thought we knew is wrong. She believed Brian might have been taken, drugged, moved through that hallway, erased before anyone knew to look. But without footage or witnesses, it remained a theory. The police said they explored all reasonable pathways. A red tea, but what if the answer was unreasonable? What if logic was the trap all along, and the door was never meant to be found? In a case with no blood, no prints, no goodbye, a sealed door feels like a scream, like evidence in drywall, like the kind of mistake only silence can protect, and the kind of clue that doesn't rot, just waits. Today, the building still stands. The bar has changed hands. The corridor was converted to storage, but that door, that quiet, sealed, painted-over door, it remains. And if you stand close enough at night, they say it gets cold, not from wind, but from whatever slipped through it, without being seen. Chapter 6. The Father's Last Promise. Randy Shaffer didn't sleep much after April 1st, 2006. His life split in half that night. Before, he was a father. After, he was a search party. Every morning he printed flyers. Every weekend he drove across Ohio. He knocked on doors, searched alleyways, sat in empty parking lots, waiting for nothing. But he always said the same thing: as long as I'm alive, I will find my son. The police slowed down, friends went back to work, the media moved on. But Randy didn't. He carried a binder with Brian's photos. He emailed detectives daily. He posted on forums, paid for billboards, mailed letters to prisons. If Brian's alive, he said, he needs to know I never stopped looking. And if he's dead, he deserves to be found. People noticed the way Randy spoke about Brian, not in the past tense. Always as if he were still breathing, still somewhere. He believed it was possible, not logical, not easy, but possible. And for Randy, that was enough. He tried everything: psychics, private investigators. He walked through forests guided by dreams. He visited shelters and hospitals, asking if anyone had seen a man with green eyes and a quiet voice. He chased every rumor, even the cruel ones. And every time, he said thank you, even when it led to nothing. But hope is a heavy thing, and carrying it alone breaks you slowly. Randy's health declined. His voice grew softer, but his hands never stopped working, even when they trembled. He once said in an interview, "My biggest fear is dying before I know what happened." That fear came true. In 2008, Randy was in his backyard during a storm. A tree cracked by lightning collapsed. He died instantly. No warning, no final message. The man who never stopped looking was gone. At his funeral, people whispered the same thing. He died with a broken heart. Some said it was unfair, others said it was cruel. But one person, quietly, said something colder. Now no one's really looking. After Randy's death, the case faded deeper into silence. No new leads, no press coverage, no more interviews, just an open file in a locked cabinet. But for those who remember, Randy's face is burned into the timeline, not just as a father, but as the last person who truly believed Brian could come back. Years later, someone placed flowers outside the bar. A note tucked beneath them read, "Your dad kept his promise, now it's your turn." No one knows who left it, but security footage showed something strange. The camera that faced the flowers blinked out for exactly 2 minutes. Some say Randy's spirit still walks through Columbus, that he stands at bus stops, looks through crowds, still searching, still waiting. Because when the world gives up on a missing person, they vanish twice. But Randy never let that happen. He didn't just look for Brian. He became the last light on a dark map. And that light still flickers. Chapter 7. The Stranger at the Memorial. It was April 1st, 2011, 5 years since Brian vanished. Friends, former classmates, and volunteers gathered outside the ugly tuna saloona. They lit candles, held hands, read poems, and played music Brian once loved. The event wasn't publicized. Just close circles, people who knew him, people who remembered. But among the flickering lights and tears, there was one face no one recognized. He stood in the back, wore a dark hoodie, baseball cap low over his face. Tall, still, not speaking, not crying, just watching. Someone said he arrived late, stood behind a tree for most of the vigil, but every few minutes, He looked straight at the building, not the crowd, just the bar. A friend of Brian's, Jeff, noticed him first. He nudged another and asked, "Do you know that guy?" No one did, they whispered. Some thought maybe he was a local, but something felt wrong. Like the air around him wasn't breathing the same as theirs. Cold, still, out of place. When the memorial ended, people hugged, cried, and slowly drifted away. The man didn't move. He stayed for another 15 minutes, staring at the dark second-story window of the now-closed bar. Then, without a word, he turned, walked down the alley, and disappeared. Someone mentioned it later online. Others chimed in. Yes, they saw him. No, they didn't recognize him. Yes, he made them uneasy. A few pulled up their phone cameras, wide shots. In one frame, blurry and distant, the man is visible. And one thing stands out. He's not looking at the bar anymore. He's looking directly at the camera. The image was enhanced, zoomed, stabilized, still unclear. But the outline of his jaw, the height, even the slight lean in his posture. Some people thought it looked like Brian, older, tired, thinner, but him. The photo made its way to forums, Reddit, Twitter. Speculation exploded. Was it Brian? A stalker? A guilty conscience returning to the scene? No one could prove anything. The photo wasn't clear enough. And by the time anyone checked the security cameras on the street, the files had already been overwritten. Police dismissed it, said it was a random person, but people who were there remember the silence he carried. He didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't react to anything. He just stared like he was waiting for something to open or someone to return. In the years that followed, the photo resurfaced often, analyzed, filtered, AI-enhanced. Facial recognition ran it against old pictures of Brian. Results came back. Inconclusive, but the software couldn't rule it out either. And that was enough to keep people wondering, what if he came back just once to see what the world did with the silence? Every year since, someone leaves a candle on that corner, not with the crowd, alone, always the same style, same shape, same scent, cedarwood and smoke. And every year someone swears they saw a man standing by the alley, watching the second-floor window again. The same window Brian smiled under, before vanishing without a trace. Chapter 8. The theory no one wants to believe. There are theories that comfort. Brian ran away. Brian got lost. Brian fell somewhere and was never found. Those give people something to hold on to. But then there's the one nobody likes to say out loud. The one even investigators avoided documenting formally. The one that starts with a question, what if Brian never left? Because someone made sure of it. The ugly tuna was undergoing renovations at the time. Several walls had been torn open. Storage rooms were blocked off. Construction workers came and went, dust, debris, exposed beams, plenty of places to hide a body or something else. One officer, off the record, said it plain. If someone wanted to hurt him in there, they could have, and it would have taken hours for anyone to notice. The chaos of a closing bar, music loud, staff distracted, drunken patrons everywhere, and Brian, last seen alone. But there was no blood, no struggle, no witnesses. Unless you count the friend who said, "I don't know," one too many times, and the employees who all claimed they saw nothing, not even a flicker, which in itself was suspicious. How do you see nothing when someone disappears right in front of you? One detective floated a theory. Brian was lured into a back room, maybe by someone he knew, or someone pretending to be a worker, drugged, moved, hidden in a space under construction, then removed later, when everyone else was gone, piece by piece. Like he was never there. The construction team was never fully interviewed. They were subcontracted. No names were logged. No backgrounds checked. Some only worked there for a day or two. And when the bar reopened weeks later, every trace of the renovation was gone. Drywall sealed, floors scrubbed, everything rebuilt, like a scene overwritten. Rumors grew darker, organ trafficking, secret debts, a targeted disappearance, that Brian had uncovered something and was silenced. It sounds like fiction, Until you remember, people vanish in public places all the time. What makes this case different is that he did it in front of cameras. One theory suggested a hidden crawl space, a space between floors, accessible only through a ceiling tile, big enough for a person, and during renovations, nobody would have checked. It was searched later, but by then, it was too late. Too many days had passed, too many changes had been made, too much time for the truth to rot away. The scariest part of all this? If Brian was murdered inside that bar and his body removed quietly, carefully, then someone in that building knows. Someone helped, or watched, or kept silent, and they've lived with it for almost 2 decades. Without cracking, without blinking, without guilt, or worse, without fear. That's why this theory terrifies people, not because it's wild, but because it might be simple. Because the ugliest truth is often the one no one investigates hard enough. Because the more you stare at a clean floor, the more you realize someone might have cleaned it too well. And the silence, it's not absence, it's cover-up. Chapter 9. The message that wasn't supposed to exist. In 2019, 13 years after Brian Shaffer vanished, the case was cold, ice cold. No new leads, no press, no movement. Until someone on a forgotten message board posted a question. Has anyone checked the old university guest servers? It was strange, random, but it sparked curiosity. Because Brian had once logged into the OSU network just days before he disappeared. A few amateur sleuths dug into the archived data, mostly junk, old chat logs, dorm banter, dead emails, but buried in a folder labeled 405 backup was a message, unopened, unread, dated April 18, 2006, 17 days after Brian disappeared. The message was sent from an untraceable account, neverleftcryptmail.org, and the subject line? Just one word, awake. Inside, the message was short. No greeting, no name, just this. I can hear them. I can't move. It's dark. I was wrong. Don't stop. The internet lit up. People debated its authenticity. Was it a hoax, a sick joke, or a message Brian himself managed to send from wherever he was? Digital forensics couldn't confirm the origin. The account had been deleted. The IP address led to a proxy in Nevada. And then, nothing. Some believed it was written under duress. The language was fragmented, urgent, terrified, almost like he was buried. Others said it sounded like someone drugged, waking up mid-abduction. I can hear them. I can't move. What kind of prison sounds like that? And who was he calling out to? The university refused to comment, said their servers were outdated, unreliable, that the message could have been backdated or fabricated, but the timestamp matched the server's own archival pattern, which meant if it was a fake, it was made by someone who knew the system intimately, someone close. Brian's girlfriend Alexis was contacted. She hadn't changed her number. She read the message and broke down. It sounds like him, she whispered, the way he wrote when he was scared. She begged authorities to reopen the case. They didn't. They said it wasn't credible, that anyone could have typed those words. But what if anyone didn't? What if someone waited 13 years to press send? What if the message wasn't for the world, but for the only person who hadn't stopped looking? Maybe it wasn't about facts. Maybe it was about fear. Maybe it was the only thing he could send before everything went dark again. To this day, the message remains unexplained, stored on mirrored hard drives, studied by cyber investigators, coders, even horror forums. Some claim there are hidden codes in the metadata. Others say the name Awake was symbolic, as if Brian was in a coma, or in another place entirely, somewhere between life and memory, just awake enough to scream. Whatever the truth is, that message became part of the myth. A digital ghost, a glitch in time. And like Brian's last smile caught on tape, it haunts, because if he really did send it, then someone knew, someone heard him, and someone somewhere chose not to answer. Chapter 10. He walked into the bar, but was never seen leaving. The footage is still online, grainy, faded, pixelated by time, but the moment is unmistakable. Brian Shaffer, smiling, a little drunk, a little tired, walking up the escalator into the ugly tuna saloona. He waves at someone, then turns the corner into the bar, and that's the last image the world ever saw. Every theory, every document, every timeline begins there. One step past the frame and into the unknown. For years, people said it was bad luck, a fluke, but the longer it stretched, the clearer it became. This wasn't a coincidence. This was design. The disappearance was too clean, too perfect. You don't just vanish in public, not in a bar, not with cameras, not with friends waiting outside, unless the place itself swallows you, unless someone inside knows how to erase people, unless you were meant to disappear. What happened in those missing minutes? Was there a fight, a setup? Did he step through a hidden door? Was he taken downstairs, drugged, killed quietly and moved during the chaos of closing time? Or did he choose to run, to escape something no one ever knew about? To leave before life caught up? None of it adds up. He didn't take money, didn't pack, didn't say goodbye, didn't look afraid. And yet, he's gone. Erased from reality like chalk in rain, and the people who might know stayed silent, or died. Even now, the ugly tuna is a ghost, new owners, new walls, but the floor still creaks in the same places, and late at night, some say they hear something moving in the walls, a faint knock, a soft drag, like someone trying to get out, or trying to be heard. The Brian Shaffer case is more than unsolved. It's a crack in the idea that the world is rational, that people are always found, that someone, somewhere, always knows something. But here, nobody knows. Or worse, they knew and said nothing. The bar's final footage was reviewed over 100 times, by detectives, by digital experts, by strangers online. No one ever found him leaving. No reflection in mirrors, no shadows slipping away, no moment missed. He walked in and was consumed. Brian's case is now a symbol of what can happen in seconds, of what the world does to people it forgets. His face is a meme, a warning, a ghost in every bar camera. And somewhere, someone still walks free. Still lives with it, still carries the weight of knowing what happened after that last wave on the escalator, but hasn't said a word in 19 years. And maybe they never will. Maybe Brian's name will echo forever in the silence between facts and fear. Or maybe, just maybe, someone will finally speak. Until then, he remains the man who stepped into the light and vanished into shadow. No body, no clue, no goodbye. Just one truth burned into history. He walked into the bar, but was never seen leaving. Closing. A hole in the map. Brian Shaffer's case isn't just unsolved, it's untouched. A wound that never closed because no one ever stitched it. No blood, no screams, no goodbye. He simply vanished, and the world kept turning. The bar reopened, classes resumed, people moved on. Except for the ones who couldn't. His friends, his brother, the woman who waited for his voice, and the father who died holding a photo no one else remembered to look at. Some say it was random, others say it was evil, but the truth is, we don't know. That's what makes it unbearable, because if Brian could vanish inside a bar, in the middle of a city, surrounded by people and cameras, then so could anyone. And if someone made him disappear, then they're still out there, living, walking, drinking, breathing, and maybe they'll never speak. Maybe the truth will stay in the walls, in the footage that loops endlessly, in the emails unanswered and messages deleted. But if you ever find yourself in Columbus and you pass by that old second-floor corner, stop, listen and ask yourself, do you really believe no one saw? Or is it just easier to pretend?